Okay, guys, in the year of our Lord 2022, did you think I would go a minute without mentioning the two events that happened on Sunday? So, gentlemen, where were you at around 3:50 for the infamous butt punt, which is now coming in the history of lexicon? And where were you at around, let's say around 9:50, maybe a little before 9:45, when Jimmy Garoppolo gave us the sequel to Dan Orlovsky's Accident Safety 14 years later? Guys, quick thoughts before we begin. Which one is more impressive?
Can I tell you that the butt punt, only because that was insane. I had to watch it twice actually. Like, did I see what I actually saw? But mad props to Mark Sanchez, who took ownership. I don't know if you guys saw the tweet.
I saw the tweet. Yeah, we saw the tweet where he said, "Stay in your lane."
He said, "Yeah." He added, Bill's punter at Thomas Morstead, and basically said, "Yo, bro, stay in your lane. Anything related to butt stuff is mine." I thought that was priceless. As far as the Orlovsky thing goes, I didn't quite remember it. I had to see the highlights again, but Orlovsky's freaking running all along the back line of the end zone. He's already out of bounds. Jimmy basically did a toe tap in comparison, but
it's still there. It's still there, though.
And that he's completely off the hook, but at least he's not alone.
Hey, I was just like to say like this. By day we seen the buzzer still, and by night we seen the honorary Stanowski get finally redeemed because someone else ran out of bounds and caused their own safety. So I would say we saw a historic day of football for all the wrong reasons. So I'm just happy to be alive to witness such fond memories.
The answer is,
have more means for you to crank out, Anthony.
By the way, the answer to that is simple. It's the accidental safety, because you know the rule. You win the game, you get some of your history erased. Okay. This is Anthony Strait. That is Jay Kaplan. I'm Stephen Rabinowitz. Welcome to On the Sports Line. So, as the unfortunately late Coolio said, come along and ride on the fantastic voyage that is known as On the Sports Lines. Tonight, all local talk, as the Hunt for October edition of this show features two baseball locals as they prepare for postseason battles, and we've already been battling before I hit record. Two football locals as they prepare to bounce back from some tough L's, and the baseball history that's being made in 2022. We'll get to the last part of it, which is not local, later on in the show, but the first part of history is our opener. So y'all heard of this guy named Aaron Judge, right? Who just hit his 61st home run tonight in the same amount of time it took Babe Ruth, by the way, to hit 60 home runs himself. And the Yankees home run record, which was held by Maris's 61 and 61, is now completely demolished. And now all that's left is another, 6 games and one Aaron Judge home run for some AL history. Is it 7? Wow, that's right. I forgot that Rangers series is a 4-game series. So a little bit of history is on the line. And thank God, because I don't know if the Maris family could take going back to New York in that same little hotel room that they were going to be in. Maybe they'll be able to be there for 62, but I think the Maris family is tired. Anyway, Judge also has the chance of being the second Triple Crown winner in all three categories in, the last half decade. I know Miguel Cabrera did it a few weeks ago. But if he can hold on in batting average, RBIs, and homers in the last two, kind of locked down for about a half a year. So, guys, this is one of the greatest Yankee seasons of all time. Might be the greatest Yankee season of all time. Jay, I'll start with you. Where does this place?
It's been such a long time since the era of Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, and Sammy Sosa that for a while I'd honestly forgotten that Roger Maris still held the American League single season record for home runs. A Yankee held the record before Maris. Some dude named Babe, his Baseball Reference page seems to indicate he could hit a little bit. So for me, that's true. And as a lifelong diehard Yankee fan, I've always felt it would be fitting if it was a Yankee to break Maris's record, especially a Yankee like Aaron Judge. The home run that number 99 hit tonight to tie number 9 with 61 years after number 9 hit 61 in 61. How's that for some Yankee numerology? Was a no-doubter. I knew at the moment I heard bat, meet, ball, it was an absolute seat-seeking missile. In terms of where this is in history, Rabbi, I'm going to let our friend Jason Stark do the talking for me. In his latest Weird and Wild column for The Athletic, which was published last Friday, had some crazy stats showing just how historic this season is. I'm using them verbatim with his approval. Even though some of them are almost a week out of date, they still paint one hell of a picture of what the Yankees de facto captain has accomplished. And I've updated them through last night's game where possible. So, Rabbi, you referenced the Triple Crown. Let's start off with 60 homer guys never wear the Triple Crown. Almost lost in the bedlam of Judge's 60th homer last Tuesday, was this unfathomable footnote. His 60th homer just happened to be the hit that gave him control of the American League Triple Crown. Now, that is not a sentence that has ever been typed before, because no 60 homer man has ever been in the race for one of those Triple Crowns. Babe Ruth, 1927, finished the top 7 in all 3 Triple Crown categories, only led in 1 homers, obviously, and he finished 42 points out of the batting average race. Caveat, he hit 356 that year. The guy who won the batting title hit 398. Bonds and Sosa, 2001, both wound up in the top 8 in all 3 categories. Bonds led the league in only homers. Sosa led only in RBIs. Neither was within 22 points of batting champ Larry Walker with 350. And that's about it. Nobody else even made the top 10 in all 3 departments. And the Triple Crown winner who hit the most homers in a season, Jimmy Fox in 1932, hit his 58th on his final at bat of the year. So he never had a shot at the 60 homer Triple Crown club. But Judge headed into last Thursday's game, leading all 3 divisions of that club. That's amazing. And with what he's done tonight, he is still leading in all 3. And I rechecked this just to make sure. Most runs, American League through 922. Aaron Judge had 123, Jose Altuve 92, Marcus Semien 92. Super helpful that Judge has driven himself in 60 times. Nevertheless, stare long and hard at that leaderboard, because you know how many players have led either league in runs scored by 30 or more in the history of baseball? A lot fewer than have hit 60 or won a Triple Crown. Ricky Henderson, 1985, led by 30. Ruth, 21, led by 45. And a guy named Ross Barnes in 1876, he led by 54. How's this for some history, guys? Barnes was born 11 years before the Civil War. So think about Judge doing something that has been done once in the last 100 years. And this is probably the first time you've ever even heard about it. Apparently this guy has some other stuff going on. I checked it through last night's game. Judge is leading the runs scored column, was down to 28. It may have gone back up after tonight. Here's the other things going into last Thursday's game where Judge led the American League. Home runs by 23. It's still 23, though, probably 24 after tonight. RBIs by 13. It was down to 9, though it's back up now. Led the AL in walks by 11 as of last Thursday. It's up to 21, 22 with tonight. Led the AL in extra base hits by 11. It was up to 13 after last night, more after tonight. Led the AL in OPS by 91 points. It was up to 97 through last night's game.
It's at 100 now, by the way. That's at 100 now, by the way, with Jordan Evans.
How insane is that? He led the AL, he's most times on base by 22, up to 36 through last night. Led in all 3 Triple Crown categories and all 3 slash line Triple Crown categories, OBP, slugging, and OPS, and he still does. Only one man in MLB history has done that. Ted Williams, twice in 1942 and 47. Check out those 2 league leaderboards, the 42 AL batting leaders and the 47 AL batting leaders. Sometimes you can find them on Baseball Reference. Williams was in a universe of his own in those years, and that's saying something when you consider that all the other Hall of Famers who played alongside him. Since Ted, only Carl Yastrzemski has had a season, it was 1967, in which he led the league in almost everything that was on that list of judges that I just read. Yaz missed leading the league in walks by 40. So yeah, as Jason said, so you get what we're driving at, right? What Judge is doing, and this is the quote, what Judge is doing is a thing we pretty much have seen no humans do in our lifetime. And Jason, I couldn't have said it any better. 61 down, hopefully at least one more to go.
You know, I look at it from obviously outside fans perspective, and when I think about the number 61, I think I told you guys one of my favorite baseball movies is the movie 61, about Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle's 61 season and then Chase. And I always talk about one of the shame of baseball was Roger Maris passing away, not really knowing that the record belonged to him because he split the records depending on the length of the season, as I was supposed to the 162 game regular season schedule. But to see Aaron Judge practically better himself to start the season when the contract negotiations broke down, and to see him go out and to put on this kind of
season, walk year ever.
Yeah, it's just like, it's almost like if you're a Yankee fan, it's the greatest thing, and then you realize, wait, each home run he may be pricing himself out of the Bronx, because I made a joke. I was like, back of the Brinks truck to this guy just immediately.
Yeah.
But I mean, it would be a shame if he's not in the Yankee uniform. I mean, and I say this as a Met fan. This is true. Guys like Aaron Judge is a once in a generation talent. You want to keep in an organization long term. I mean, it would be just bizarre to see him in anything but Yankee pinstripes. To see the guy come up in 2016 has one of the baby bombers, and then in 2017 kind of exploded. The Yankees get to the ALCS, and to see Aaron Judge, and the fact that as he just like a larger than life guy, figuratively and literally, and it's not even fact. And some of his home runs, even they're like 500-foot balls that haven't landed yet. Or in the case of tonight, a line driver that just kind of shoots out of the stadium before you know it.
Yep.
I mean, the way that he has involved as a hitter, and the fact that he's hitting the ball bringing all sides of the field, he's more selective. He's not chasing the high pitches that he was early in his career. And to see that, and to see how he is really, like I said, he put the weight of everything and the uncertainty about beyond this season on his shoulders, and just go out there and he just absolutely balled out. I mean, as a baseball fan, that's been one of the best things to see. I found myself rooting for him, to break this record, because I was like, okay, why guys? Why are people still pitching to him? It's like, can somebody please pitch to him already? I mean, have some balls for crying out loud. I mean, they were walking.
Well,
I mean, it's an MLB record tape for the most walks of three game series.
Hold on.
Rabbi and I talked kind of the strategy.
We talked about this beforehand. We
Rabbi,
talked about
let you into that, but I just want to say this. It's the props that I have to give Judge, and Rabbi, I'm setting you up here, is that even when he must have been frustrated, not getting, pitches to hit and all those at bats in the 7-game drought where he walked so often, he never once got away from the way he goes about hitting, never once expanded his strike zone, stayed within himself, and true to what he's always said from day one, numbers will take care of themselves. I only care about winning.
Well, I mean, everybody is going to say that. Who the hell is going to say numbers? My numbers are the most important. By the way, Anthony, let me get back to the point of the Blue Jays walking him. That's what you should be doing, because the Blue Jays are in this thing called a pennant race. They're looking to secure a playoff position. They may see the Yankees again. Why would you ever give Aaron Judge anything to hit in any situation? If you're down, if you're up, because the man has been as close to automatic this year. And by the way, we'll talk about the free agency another time, but the fact that you're doing this as possibly being the biggest free agent of all time in MLB, considering of what he just did, is amazing. It's said for themselves. I don't know if Jay said this in his 5-hour diatribe from Jason Stark, but the one thing I want to say
diatribe?
I know. But I want to make sure
diatribe is negative.
This is amazing. The fact that right now the number of home runs between him and the next on the list, Kyle Schwarber, is 24. No one had ever entered September with a 15 home run lead except for one person, Babe Ruth. And that's the list. It's Babe Ruth 4 times and Aaron Judge. The way that everything has been going on this year with Aaron Judge is amazing. I know, obviously, don't ever pitch to him in any situation. He has been by far the most, like I said, this can easily go down. I know DiMaggio had his 56-game hitting streak. I know a lot of Yankee players, like, This Yankee team might be a World Series contender, but that could be a but. Statistically, seeing what he's done in an era where it's a lot of more make or miss, and going into the 40 home run club, or especially the 50 home run club, is rare. Again, no one's done it in the major leagues this year, my friends, is the reason why I think this is one of the greatest seasons of all time by Yankee. I like the Triple Crown numbers. The one thing I will say this to combat Jay, Bonds hit better than Judge during his Triple Crown year because it's 313. But again, that Judge is hitting 313 and leading, and that anybody is hitting only 313 and leading a league is kind of crazy. But again, when you do it at the top of your peers, ahead of what your peers are doing, it's amazing. There should be nobody else who is voted for AL MVP. If it's not unanimous, the vote is rigged. That's all I'm going to say. Maybe you want to vote for Jose Ramirez. That's the only acceptable answer I will give you. Everybody else.
Ohtani's not an acceptable answer for MVP.
Ohtani's not an acceptable answer because his team is millions of games under 500. You should be on a winning team to be most valuable player, or you need to impress me a tremendous amount. That's just me. That's for another time. All right, gents. There's more other Bronx Bombers that we have to talk about. Their final week is just about getting right. They've won the AL East. They clinched that last night with a victory over Toronto. And then after their last game in Texas next Wednesday, it's wait and see mode for the next 6 days after. They've clinched the 2 seed already because they've had a big lead over the Guardians, who clinched the AL Central, which we'll get into in a moment. And they're mathematically still in the chase against the Astros, but very, very unlikely to pass them. So, guys, let's ask the hard-hitting questions, which are neither hard or hitting. Just kidding. Very, very, very difficult. All right, Jay. Through these final few games, what do the Yankees need to resolve to get right as the postseason approaches?
I mean, there's a few things, but the one that's
I'm only asking for one after the second half.
I know. The one that stands out to me is the role in the bullpen. I mean, we all had concerns when Aroldis Chapman struggled earlier in the season and then went on the injured list for the first time. He seemed to be on his way back to being closer material. Then got an infection from a tattoo, went back on the injured list and seemed to lose his stuff to the point where he may be unplayable in the postseason. Then Clay Holmes stepped up and became the AL's most dominant closer in the first half, earning an All-Star berth. Then he struggled after the All-Star break, and for the first time in the Aaron Boone era, the closer position, specifically in the back end of the bullpen overall, was no longer a strength. Closing out games became a big unknown. Holmes also went on the IL after the All-Star break and seemed to rediscover his stuff, but he's still having some consistency issues. He's recorded as many losses as saves since July 9th, and that's through earlier in this week. And even though he currently sports a sub 260 ERA with a 2.85 fielding independent pitching and over 9 Ks per 9, his left on base rate is above 70%, but that's only right around average. And his August and September numbers are concerning. In 6 August appearances, over 5 1/3 innings, gave up 4 earned runs, which equates to a 6.75 ERA. And that's on the heels of a 7 flat ERA in July over 9 innings. So far, September's been a little bit better, but he's given up 7 runs, 5 earned in 11 appearances, covering 12 2/3. All this has caused Boone to mix and match with the likes of Jonathan Loaizaga, who seems to have turned his season around, Lou Trevino, who's been solid since getting picked up at the trade deadline, and a pair of rookies in Clark Schmidt and Ron Marinaccio, among others. The Yankees have recovered from that awful 10-18 August and are back to their winning ways, 16-7 through last night's game, 17-7 now, once this win becomes official. And that has partially been due to the mixing and matching working more often than not. But no World Series champ has won the title with its bullpen not locked into specific roles to the extent that the Yankee pen is right now. The return of Scott Efros and Zach Britton, who has plenty of closer and setup man experience both with the Yankees and across his career resume, should hopefully bring some more stability to the back end of the bullpen. The Yankees have 16 walk-off wins, 5 more than any team, and tied for the Yankees most ever. They've had at least 13 walk-off wins in 6 seasons and played in the World Series each time, winning 5. They, however, are also tied for the Major League lead with 10 walk-off losses, their most since 1988. Now that the AL East title is secured, all eyes are going to be, on Judge's chase for 62, 61 down, one more to go, as we talked about. My eyes included. But I'm also going to be watching how Boone manages the bullpen, who he uses in what leverage situations over these last, 7-8 games, hoping that at least gives us some sense of the roles being sorted, because we all know how important it is to lock down the last 3 innings when you have a lead, especially when you're in the chase for 28.
I'm very curious to see if a starter also kind of becomes a key factor, kind of like the Phil Hughes role in 2009. So if you have a guess of who the closer is going to be of the Yankees right now, and we're only 2 weeks away before a game 1 at Yankee Stadium, I would be very surprised. All right,
Chapman's closing out the game tonight, but it's 8-3.
There's no real answer to the question.
No,
Chapman has showed ebbs and flows, and that even if he saves 10 games in a row, it's the 11th game that's going to make everybody on the edge of their seat, especially the way he's played in the last few ALCSs.
Situation, he actually brought Schmidt in. He brought in Schmidt when it was still a safe situation in the 8th. So
the bullpens are very different these days also, but you need a lockdown closer, and a lot of teams in the postseason don't have that. All right, Anthony, take your attention away from the Mets for 5 seconds and tell me who your X factor is in this postseason for the Yankees.
I'll put you like this. The 2019 Nationals proved that you can have a messy bullpen and still win it all. So
Braves last year too, by the way. The Braves were just more of a mix and match club. It's been a while since we've seen a lockdown bullpen, but you need to be better than what the Yankees are right now.
Yeah, but the X factor to me is going to be Giancarlo Stanton, and you think about the production he was putting out prior to the All-Star break: 24 home runs, 61 RBI. He actually homered in the All-Star game. He got the Achilles injury, and obviously in his 26 games back, he's been kind of struggling. The time is not there. He's batting well under 2. He's actually batting under 200 since he came back. 4 home runs, including the game winner last week against the Pirates, the walk-off grand slam, 14 RBIs. But when you think about Stanton's his power numbers, and when you pile him up with Aaron Judge, you think about this in the first 26 games where Judge and Stanton both homer, the Yankees were 25-1. So when you think about Judge, obviously you see his ability to bat lead off second. You can move around the lineup and Stanton being that cleanup guy. And obviously, I would assume they're going to keep him as a DH going into the postseason. Clearly, you don't want him fielding just coming off the Achilles injury. But you think about his percentage in fastballs is just barely a buck. It's 103. So the time is not there, and if he can kind of get into a groove, obviously he got a week left in the season. Everything is kind of a formality at this point. Stanton's the guy you kind of want to get going, because you think about his postseason career. He has 8 home runs in 19 postseason games for the Yankees, and when he gets red hot, we saw this towards the end of last year. I mean, he can really carry a team all by himself. We saw it in the shortened 2020 season, and then that wild card series against the Cleveland Indians, our Cleveland Guardians. Stanton, if he can, like I said, they can get him this timing going. He get a couple of hits, kind of get his bat speed up to par, because he's missed so many games. He could be a real big X factor in a Yankee lineup that, they kind of struggled without him. They went 12-17, obviously, in the games he was out. The Yankees could be that would really help that lineup, especially if teams are going to pitch around Aaron Judge to get to the rest of that lineup.
Yeah, I would say this. There is a guy out there by the name of DJ LeMahieu who is about to come back into the lineup as of tomorrow, who I feel like is just as big of an X factor. It really is what one of the big three that's not named Aaron Judge, whether it be LeMahieu, whether it be Donaldson, and whether it be Stanton, where is that spark coming from? Because if you can't find it, Aaron Judge is going to be walked every single time up at bat in the postseason, just like he was this week, because there's really nothing you can do to stop it. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about
to contain him.
Yeah, well, that's all I'm going to say though. They need a second person. A lot of questions.
More than just a second. Rabbi, right now the second person is Rizzo. Rizzo has done his job for the most part. It's a question of how do you get that length back in that lineup that you were seeing when they were they were world beaters in the first half of the season. That length has not been there because, as you said, no one else has been able to maintain any kind of consistency at the plate.
I think the good thing for the Yankees coming up in this postseason is very simple. It's the fact that the Astros are a much more prepared and ready team than the Yankees are. You don't have to worry about that until the ALCS. But the good thing for the Yankees is all the teams that they're not going to see the Rays or the Blue Jays most likely in a first round matchup. They're kind of occupying 4 and 5. They're going to probably play each other. So you have a Mariners team who has been very struggling over the last few weeks of the season. Their hitting is pitiful. And they're with an Orioles team, although I don't want to ever face Julio Rodriguez in any way, shape, or form in one game. But you also have the Orioles who are in striking range, but the Yankees have treated the Orioles like their little brother over the past few years. So the Guardians are a team, the former Indians, the Guardians, and this is a nice way to celebrate your name change, winning the AL Central, an AL Central that no one thought was possible. But Jose Ramirez and guys have gotten the job done this year. Ramirez is batting, I believe, 318, 28 home runs, 119 RBIs. It's been a good season for him, and I think he's led a very young team out there this year. It's going to be very interesting to see what this team comes, because there's a lot of unknown. The Yankees haven't really seen this team since July. And if you remember earlier this year, Yankee fans were basically throwing stuff at the Guardians after a Saturday walk-off win. So motivation is there. But it's very interesting to see. This is a much different playoff bracket than you were going to see, but because you're not going to see teams like the Angels who have the big money guys. You're never going to see teams like the Angels in this, right? The Red Sox aren't coming through that door. The White Sox were favored this year. They're not walking through that door either. The Guardians were such a surprise this year that the Chicago White Sox, who were far and away the best team coming into this playoffs, basically posted a meme back on April the 5th saying, anybody want to come into this house? And it was a picture of that Will Smith meme of an empty house. And then when the Guardians clinched on Sunday, and it was so fast, I didn't even realize they had held a 9-game lead in their division. Their magic number literally went down from like 20 to 3 in the span of 10 days. That they posted a picture of, I don't remember the other player, but Jose Ramirez saying, basically saying, welcome to our house, and house guests are invited. So the Cleveland Guardians have, guys, Anthony, I'll let you finish in a second. The Cleveland Guardians have been defying expectations all year. So what's another series victory over the Yankees? The Yankees should be happy to see them in round one.
And I would give a shout out to Dr. Celia Santos of MLB Network, because she diagnosed the White Sox as pretty much down the dumps. I mean, literally just earlier this month, they were a game behind. Like, how the White Sox fell apart so quickly is probably going to be one of the more talked about situations in the offseason when you talk about the White Sox, also as far as what's going to happen with the managerial situation. Tony La Russa having his health issues. Obviously, we all wish him all the best here. But this is the Guardians, obviously, this young team, and we don't. Terry Francona, I think we just don't give enough credit to how good of a manager he has been for such a long time. First in Boston, and
he's going to easily win AL Manager of the Year, I think. I know the guy who is in Seattle, it might be Scott Service, I'm not 100% sure, is going to get some votes too. But that's his award this year.
It's a postseason field of new blood in the American League outside of the Yankees and the Astros. I love it.
It is Scott Service, Rabbi. You are correct.
I figured it's hard to figure out MLB managers this year. If you ask me to name if you ask me a test, I would probably fail it. Okay, on to the Mets. They are completely different because they have a lot to play for in this last week of the season. They're in this thing that, as a New Yorker, especially as a Met fan, they rarely hear about. It's called the pennant race. Heard those things are really fun. This is a massive. I can't say enough that this is a series that the Mets need to win. Even one win gets them the tiebreaker. The Braves are already playing 3D chess, saying, no, you can't play Thursday when we know there's going to be perfect weather in here. We're banking on a doubleheader or makeup games. Such mind effingness. I hate that so much. But enough about that. With the invention this year of the wild card, there is not a one-game playoff anymore for the division. So one win in this Mets series, and they'll get the head-to-head tiebreaker. But, Anthony, they need 2 of 3. I think you can honestly say that as a series starts Friday in Atlanta, maybe. But enough about me. Let's get to the questions. Anthony, the Mets need to get right this week, or they'll be playing a wild card series. It says next Friday, but the makeup games make it so confusing. I don't know what to think. We'll preview everything next week about the clusterfuck that's going on. But what do the Mets need to resolve this final week of the season? There's a lot of things.
Oh, man, I would say it's the inconsistency with the offense. And you think about the second. Ooh, just foul. Anyway, you think about the Mets inconsistency with scoring runs, and I think back to that since that Dodgers series and how they can look like world beaters one night and then just really struggle to score runs the next. Think about this. They came into this month with the easiest schedule remaining in baseball, was for a Met fan that was kind of like, okay, knock on wood, jinx. They went 5-11, 5-6 in a stretch when they lost to the Nationals. They lost games to Miami. They were swept by the Cubs inexplicably as well. And, by the way, a lot of these games at home, and they went to a 13-game stretch where they scored 3 runs or less. They were 0 for 22 with the bases loaded for about 3 weeks up until Vogelback's double a couple of weeks ago. So this team has been so madly inconsistent. They just came off a road trip where they actually had 19 hits against the Oakland Athletics and scored 9 runs and 10 runs and the 2 wins they got out in Oakland. And then prior to that, the offense kind of exploded for 2 of the 3 wins they had in Milwaukee. But it's been the games at home, and even last night's game against Miami, where they just had 6 hits total. One of them was a 3-run homer from Pete Alonso, who's heating up after he went through a little bit of a early months slump. So this team, and so I have to put this out there. I know, Rabbi, you're bringing up Starling Marte's absence in this lineup is definitely being felt.
It's huge. It's very huge because it gives you the second guy.
Yeah, he was that second guy behind Brandon Nimmo, who was able to put the ball play consistently, get on base. Obviously, he's an all-star. There was a report today that the swelling in his finger has not gone down. So that's definitely not good news because now he can't resume baseball activities. The Mets were hoping to possibly have him back in this weekend series against Atlanta. That's not going to happen. But then guys got to step up. I mean, you got Francisco Lindor at one point. He got hot in the last week and a half, but he went through a stretch of 98 consecutive at bats, but he didn't hit a home run. Early this year, I think, Jay, you talked about it on one of our shows during the season, the Mets' lack of power, but being able to still score runs, but runners to score position, especially in April and May. But after that, since really after the All-Star break, the Mets have really had a hard time driving in runs. I mean, that 3-game series against Chicago, I was actually at one of the games in City Field. They had the bases loaded twice in that game and had runners in scoring positions on 4 separate occasions. And you had a strikeout, a pop-up, a fly-out in one situation. The Mets they're even though they're in a pennant race, they still have division. Obviously, you got Atlanta. When we're looking around the National League field, they're surrounded by teams who can't score runs. I mean, you think about the Phillies who can score runs, who could be a playoff opponent in the wild cards to the Mets going to win the division. You think about obviously the Atlanta Braves, the Dodgers is probably the most complete team in baseball without question, and even the Padres. And with Juan Soto being added to the mix, so the Mets, even with the pitching they have lined up, they're gonna have to figure out a way to take advantage of getting guys in score position and getting in runs. Even if they're not a home run hitting team. We know this, but they gotta get back to getting to what they were doing early in the year, and that's being able to drive in runs. And the Mets just walked it off just now. But they have to be able to take advantage of runners in scoring position and get guys in regardless, because they're gonna have to score runs. Look, Soldier, DeGrom, Bassett, whoever the fourth pitcher is, they can't go out there feel like they gotta go Cy Young and pitch a perfect game, and you only get the 1 or 2 runs as far as run support. So the Mets really have to get the bats going and get hot right away. Even if they don't win the division, it's the momentum going into the playoffs that they got to get the bats going. And Marte not being there, it's just more of an added thing that they have to figure out. Maybe get back to the small ball that was so successful early in the season that allowed the Mets to have the 10.5 game lead going into the month of June.
It's funny though. It's kind of funny with all of these struggles, and the Braves lost, by the way. So it is a 1-game lead that the Mets will go into that series. But again, a lot of uncertainty because one or two of those games have a very huge danger of being rained out, which is going to make a nightmare for schedulers across Major League Baseball. It could lead to them having to play a true Thursday off day, game 162, which would be just the worst case scenario for both teams. By the way,
because no off day,
no off day, and they would have to use it. So it's
Friday.
It's very confusing. But the one thing I will say is this: they've only lost 3 games since the Pirates series, so they're on the right track. Both teams, it's very weird. I could say, yes, these troubles are there, but they're there for both teams. Bullpen is a big issue for Atlanta, not an issue as much for the Mets right now.
Yeah, Kelly Jensen.
Braves don't.
I would say that.
Yeah. Braves still have some pitching issues with Spencer Strider being out. I'm very, very interested to see sometimes because September games are just not easy. I think that's something that we've realized over here. A September game against the Marlins may seem like a cakewalk, but it's a lot of pressure for you and nothing for them. And I think that's something we've seen, honestly. I know Anthony is like this very, very nervous Mets fan, but we've seen this on the Braves side too. They had a chance to do some things in San Francisco when they lost 2 of 3 of that series. And yes, the Cubs series is just a bad series overall. But again, they didn't get swept until that series at all of this year. And they've only lost 2 series in all of September. So it's just a very weird situation right now. A lot of the nervousness.
You want to talk about Will? I'm about to update my Facebook status. I was a little angry earlier tonight.
I was gonna say,
I can breathe a sigh
Mr.
of relief
Negative
now.
here just willed his way into a one game division lead there, buddy. All right.
Yeah.
Let's move ourselves on. Jay, give me an X factor for the Mets in the postseason. Not a big fan of that DH spot that you're going to talk about, but you think it's a big thing going in.
I think it's, I think it's an X factor because if they can actually do something with it more than they're doing now, it's a boost that they need. It's a question of whether or not that spot in the lineup is going to continue to be the platoon of Daniel Vogelback and Darren Ruff, or who knows, something else.
Pujols was in the lineup tonight at DH. So
hey, but I mean, guys, is there a good team in the NL who has struggled more to adjust? Thursday's games, the Mets were 11th in the National League. The Mets DHs were 11th in the National League in batting average at 221, 8th in OBP at 312, 10th in slugging at 376, 9th in OPS at 688. They're 13th in home runs with 16, 8th in RBIs with 79. Vogelback from the left side has been decent since coming over from Pittsburgh through Thursday. Slash line of 252, 399, 435 with 5 homers, 23 RBI, and an 834 OPS in 49 games covering 131 at bats. The right side of the platoon, and Buck has used a strict lefty-righty platoon at DH since Vogelback arrived, has been, to put it bluntly, abysmal. They brought in Darren Ruff from the Giants with the idea that the veteran hitter would give them some consistent pop from that side. That hasn't been the case, as Ruff has a 152, 216, 197 slash line with 0 home runs and only 7 RBI and a 413 OPS in 28 games covering 66 at bats. As a Met, after 90 games and 268 at bats for the Giants, where he only put up not much better, a 216, 328, 373 slash line with 11 homers, 38 RBI, and a 701 OPS. They've been given rookie Mark Vientos some at-bats as the right-handed DH. Kid beat up on left-handed pitching this season at AAA. They feel he's a good enough prospect to justify giving him the chance to do the same thing in the majors. But his production hasn't been any better than Ruff's. In 10 games as a DH through last night, he's had 25 at-bats, slash line of 160, 276, 320, 1 homer, 3 RBI, and a 596 OPS. Yeah, Ruff's numbers against left-handed pitching are solid across his career. 272, 367, 523 slash line with 39 homers, 102 RBI, and 891 OPS over 600 at bats. Those numbers, I understand wanting to give him as much of an opportunity as possible to be the hitter he has been. But at some point, the gravity of the situation, meaning the postseason, dictates that you have to go in a different direction so that you've got your best 9 players in the lineup to give you the best combination of offense and defense. With that in mind, I'm on board with the suggestion of Tim Britton, the Mets beat writer for The Athletic. And it's just an interesting idea. And when let me get this out, and Anthony, I kind of want to hear your take on it. Move Eduardo Escobar and his power bat from third base to DH, hit his 20th home run tonight and drove in the winning run, and put Louis Guillorme and his slick glove at third base to improve the infield defense. Yeah, he hasn't had the best September, 217, 357, 217 slash line, and only a 575 OPS. And his career OPS against left-handed pitching is below 600. But as Britton wrote, and here's the quote, if you're not getting offense from the spot, why not improve something? That something would be the infield defense. So, which is something the Mets could use behind some of those pitchers.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, like I said, I think if Martin was healthy, that definitely would have been a good idea because Martin's obviously the regular right field starter for the Mets. But that's not a bad idea. And I thought about because Guillorme is the better third baseman of the two, and Escobar being a DH, you keep him in the lineup. And he's a switch hitter, so it's not like you have to platoon the DH. But then you have the issue in the outfield, whereas because Marte is not healthy, okay, then you have to kind of start Ruff in the outfield and have McNeil play second, because that kind of, and that's where the situation get kind of dicey, because
it's the trickle down effect of Marte still being out. I got you.
Because Ruff obviously has struggled at the plate, even though he's a decent outfielder. He's a decent outfielder. He showed that when he started in Oakland. He has not hit the ball. He has not been hitting the ball at all since coming over to the Mets, and then that creates a hole in the lineup, and that's how I say Marte's injury is so huge as far as not just it's a strong arm in the outfield. Like he has by far the strongest arm.
Tool guy.
Yeah, of the Mets outfielders, and obviously you don't want to move Nemo from center field because he has the range, and he naturally plays a deep center field as it is. That kind of leaves McNeil playing left field. He's done a great job outside of tripping and stumbling and falling in Oakland that caused Dick to grab a couple of runs. He's done a good job in left field, and like you said, the Mets was one of the teams that were supposed to have benefited the most from the DH, the Universal DH, but that was when Dominic Smith was kind of the ideal guy to be in that role. That didn't work out. Obviously, Cano, that didn't work out.
So the Davis didn't work out.
Even J.D. Davis didn't quite work out. So the Mets is really kind of just platoon a numerous amount of players in that role. They just haven't had the power to go along with being in the DH. I even thought about, hey, why don't you allow Peter Lawson to be the DH and have Ruff start at first base? I mean, he can play first base too, but then you have to take Ruff hitting into consideration. And obviously, Vogelback has the power, but he can't. You don't want him in the outfield.
You can't
put him in the field.
No. He's either DH or he's sitting.
Right.
So the best of the situation, where as far as the DH goes, was they have guys that's good at one thing, but not necessarily the other, and that's where you kind of have this platooning in and out of the lineup that we've been seeing over the last couple of months.
It'll be interesting to see if once Marte is healthy and back in the lineup, the trickle down effect of people then being able to go back to their usual spots, if you will, if Buck will entertain the notion that, I just threw out there that Tim Britton wrote about. That'll be interesting to see.
I'm very interested to see. And like this weekend series is a huge chance for the real strength of the Mets. Their pitching going with their top three, Bassett, DeGrom, and Scherzer. Is it Bassett, DeGrom, Scherzer, or Bassett, Scherzer, DeGrom?
It's Bassett, DeGrom, and Scherzer.
Okay, I just wanted to know which order it was.
But I mean, the pitching matchup, and that's serious. Oh man,
yeah. But the Rant again,
that is playoff material. But of course, Mother Nature may have other
Mother
ideas,
Nature is
so
going to be a very huge, interesting, and we'll talk about that. Very quickly, for team that the Mets don't want to see other side of the bracket, we're not going to go with the obvious Los Angeles Dodgers here. We're not going to focus on them. That's a Captain Obvious answer. And we're not going to go with the Braves just because of the fact that they can't see each other until the NLCS. So that focuses on, I'm going to count the Brewers out in this situation, although they're still kind of fighting with the Phillies, but I don't think the Brewers are kind of in that run.
That's a score because the Phillies were down, and
but I'm still not.
A half game, so
I'm still not going to put the Brewers in there. I'm focusing on the Phillies, who the Mets have a 14-5 record against this year, and has seemed to bring their best stuff against almost all of the time. I think the Padres are a team that has been done very well against the Mets, but I do think with the Mets being able to set their pitching staff almost the exact way that they want to in that series, again, Braves series notwithstanding, if that gets a little screwed up in one way, I think that's going to be fine. So the answer to me of the team that you don't want the Mets to see is everyone's like, get into that wild card match or get into that CS. But honestly, the St. Louis Cardinals in 2006 kind of ruined a really good Mets season. And the St. Louis Cardinals in 2022 can also do the same thing. By the way, since 2000, here are the years that the Cardinals have missed the playoffs. 2003, 2007, 2008, 2016, 2017, and 2018. That's it. That's the list. 6 years in the new millennium. There is no better model of consistency than the St. Louis Cardinals. And what do you know? They have final postseasons from two of the best models of consistency, Albert Pujols, who we'll talk about later, and Yadier Molina, who will probably play a bench role in this playoffs. He's only played 70 games this year, but he is a very big person to have. And it could be Adam Wainwright's final game too, as earlier this year, Adam Wainwright and Yadier Molina became the longest tenured battery, most games of a battery in the history of Major League Baseball, which is insane. Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, both strong MVP candidates. I'd put them and Alonso in that same category. Goldschmidt had a chance at the Triple Crown earlier this year. He's kind of fallen down a little bit since the Cards have really not played a significant game since September. And Arenado, as always, a big power hitter, a straight up 30-100 season currently right now, having 293. But what I'm very interested to see is the pitching. Where are they going to go with the order? Is Adam Wainwright, who is 11-11, but is 40 years old and is very easy to break, who's pitched 187 innings this year, where is he going to stand? Who's going to start at game one? Is it going to be Miles Mikolas? Is it going to be, you have Jose Quintana in there, who's done very well in his limited starts? Is it going to be Jordan Montgomery, who has had a great, I wouldn't even say resurgence because he wasn't bad when he came to the Cardinals, in a move that still people are questioning to this day of why.
I'm going to go out on a limb, Rabbi. I'm going to say Wainwright starts game one.
I think Mikolas would start game one, honestly, in my opinion, but we'll see what happens. They will be having to host a 3-game division series. The 2 seed is out of their reach, and they'll host a week 6 seed, whether it be the division rival Brewers, who, when you play a team 19 times during a year, there is no gimmies, or they're going to host the Phillies, who have been kind of on the downside lately, but still possess a lot of power. Although, again, those 3 games are going to be in St. Louis and down in the bandbox that is whatever the hell Citizens Bank Park is. I think it's still Citizens Bank Park. This is going to be this is going to be a very interesting team to see this postseason, and this is a dog run. This is a dog fight in this NL.
Yeah.
I know the best team, possibly one of the best teams we've ever seen in all time record wise, in the 2022 Dodgers, and when you just take one of them out, they put you in the morgue and just hit you with more power and pitching than anybody else does. But the Braves are the defending champions. The Mets have the best 1-2-3 combo in baseball. The Cardinals are the Cardinals and have strengths at both sides of the plate. The Padres were built to win, but are just kind of little kitty cats out there. The Brewers have had playoff experience. This is a murderer's row. The answer is not very simple of who the Mets don't want to see on their side of the postseason, but I don't want to see them play the Cardinals if I'm a Mets fan.
I'd have to concur with.
You mentioned Wayne White and Yadier Molina. Ironically, the heroes of that 2006 NLCS, but also, and we'll talk about him later on the show, Albert Pujols. So that's kind of like the ironic bridge between the 2016 and the 2022 team that is very eerily similar in the fact that the Cardinals, even taking out Paul Goldschmidt and found ways to win without the power, they've just been such a good, consistent team all season long, particularly after the All-Star break. They were a scary team, regardless of all the teams in the National League. Obviously, they're the team that I think would have the best chance of getting hot and winning the table. And that would be going through the Mets or the Dodgers or even the world champion Braves, because they're just that set up for that. They have the pitching, they have the complete offense, they have the experience. I think that's the most important thing too. When you think about the postseason and now having that extra round to have to get to it, because now you think about it's not just the physical, it's the mental thing too. Can you get high? Can you maintain that focus for an extra round of playoff baseball? So, I mean, this is going to be a really fun month of October and November we're walking into.
Guys, I kind of want to talk about that wild card round next week when we'll know the teams in the postseason. So I kind of want to go back to that extra round and the pros and cons of that. So hold that thought for a week if you can. All right. Now, the unfortunate tale of two teams that occupy the palace known as MetLife Stadium. It was a rough week for both the New York Giants and New York Jets week number 3. But in week 4, both have winnable matchups. Sorry, Jay. Against average quarterbacks. Again, sorry, Jay. We'll review the lows of week 3 and the possible highs of week 4. And now, guys, your friendly neighborhood rabbi has been told to stop being a negative Nancy and accentuate the positive this week. So I will. The 23-16 loss by the New York Giants in week 3 to a Dallas Cowboys team, which showed that they're about as good with Cooper Rush as they are with Dak Prescott. It showed building blocks. However, again, now a small negative Nancy thing here. When you lose to a division rival that you were favored against, not by much, it's only by 1, some examination needs to be done. So here we go. Here come the 2-1 Bears, fresh off a buzzer beater win against the Houston Texans. The Bears are leading the NFC North at 2-1. Let me explain.
Say that again. I don't think I heard that right.
The Bears are leading the NFC North at 2-1, and their quarterback has thrown for 298 yards in 3 games this year.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how they got there either, but here we are. Jay, for this sense. Jay, for this, it's only 3 games in. Jay, positive or negative? What did you see offensively as a takeaway from that Cowboy game, and what they need to do to include it?
I saw a little bit of both. I'm going to lean going to try and stress the improvements that I saw. Solid scheme by Kafka, executed pretty well by Jones and by Barkley. The offensive line was an issue, and the wide receiver drops were costly. So let me get into each one of those as we go. One of the concerning things that I had seen, and apparently so had Steve Young, because he mentioned this on Monday Night Football in the pregame, over the first 2 weeks of the season was his processing. He seemed to lock in on one half of the field and often one receiver. He came into the Dallas game having the longest time from snap to throw in the NFL and the fourth shortest average pass distance in the NFL. He was better in both areas against the Cowboys, largely due to the scheme that I mentioned that the offensive coordinator Mike Kafka had for the game. He had Jones in the offense playing more up-tempo, more hurry up, no huddle, and more so in the second half than the first. A lot of that was in an attempt to offset the offensive line struggles with the Dallas pass rush, as evidenced by the 5 sacks, 3 by DeMarcus Lawrence. But if you remember, the few times that Jones was actually allowed to play up-tempo last season, he seemed to make better reads, throws, and plays, and that was the case again tonight. Kafka's play calls were designed to get the ball out of Jones's hands quickly, and he made good decisions on run-pass options early in the game. Got the ball out and downfield to his receivers, especially rookie Daniel Bellinger, who I liked what I saw from him, had the best game of his rookie season so far, 5 targets, 4 catches, 40 yards. And Jones making plays with his legs, running for first downs, trying to move the offense down the field. And until the interception by Travion Diggs on the last play of the game for the Giants, which wasn't a great throw, but David Stills fell down coming out of his break, so that didn't help matters. The intentional grounding earlier in the fourth quarter was his worst decision, and it was really only really bad one in my opinion. But despite going more up tempo and having Saquon Barkley and the tight ends trying to help rookie right tackle Evan Neal with chip blocks, Jones was under pressure most of the night. Dallas had 12 quarterback hits, third most of Jones' career according to True Media Stats. And they pressured the Giants quarterback on 26 of his 49 dropbacks. That is a ridiculous 53% pressure rate, guys. That was a career high for Jones. We had talked about the drops on texts between us, and there were plenty. There was issues with route running. Sterling Shepard aside, and guys, what a blow to lose him for the year, tearing his ACL in a non-contact play. The only other reliable playmaker that Jones has was Saquon. 14 carries for 81 yards on the ground, 4 catches on 4 targets for 45 yards through the air. Those drops and route running issues had Jones' final passing numbers looking pedestrian. 21 of 37. That's only a 54% completion percentage. Only 196 yards. Has yet to top 200 in any game this year. That's only 5.3 yards per attempt, no touchdowns, and the 1 pick. He made, with all that, he still made some borderline heroic plays considering the constant pressure he was under practically every time he dropped back. Made an impossible throw off his back foot that had me going, no. Okay, that barely passed over a Cowboy defender's fingertips and hit Richie James for a 16-yard gain to start a fourth quarter field goal drive that cut Dallas's lead to 23-16. Jones's best play of the game, though, was negated by an offensive pass interference penalty on Shepard, one of 2 bad penalties by the veteran. Jones had escaped the pocket, sidestepped Lawrence, and delivered a 20-yard dime to wide receiver Kenny Golladay while being hit. That's the second week in a row that an OPI call has negated a great off-schedule play by Jones that went for big yards. Those plays he made with his legs that I referenced had him finishing with 79 yards on 11 carries. It's over 7 yards a tote. Just 2 yards shy of Barkley for the team lead for the night. Barkley averaged 5.8 yards per carry, and his third quarter 36-yard touchdown run showcased the full pre-injury Saquon skill set, cutting back to avoid D-line penetration at the initial point of attack, running through a defender, pursuing from the backside, and then freezing 2 more defenders down the field with a quick cut before outracing everyone to take the ball to the house. Glaringly obvious to me, guys, and this is the big thing, that in order for the Giants offense to take the Kafka-Dable scheme to the next level, they desperately need a legitimate playmaking wide receiver 1, and Kenny Golladay is nowhere near that right now. I'm going to say it right here on the show, call it the biggest bold prediction I've probably ever made in recent show history. Kenny Galladay's not going to be a Giant next season. He can complain all he wants about his playing time, and with Shepard, he'll probably get more snaps to change people's minds, including mine. But the guy has flat out not lived up to his contract. He got more playing time after being limited to 2 snaps in week 2 and complaining about that. But he failed to record a catch on 3 targets. His drop on a fourth quarter third down drew boos from a crowd fed up with the underachieving $72 million receiver. To sum it all up, I saw enough Monday night to be cautiously optimistic about this offense improving as the season goes on. But if the lack of playmaking from the wide receivers continues, and here's hoping the returns from injury by Kadarius Toney and Wan'Dale Robinson will improve on that, and the O-line continues to struggle with pass protection, then Jones, Barkley, and company are going to hit a very low ceiling and put undue stress on the defense to be the unit that wins games for this team.
There's so many things to break in here. I want to get to it quickly. Daniel Jones's pressures, and I think it was actually 24, not 26, but I'm not sure. But it was the second. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. But second most pressures.
Don't argue with me on chat.
Well, you didn't mention the most problems that second most pressures by any NFL quarterback in 2 years. Just saying, that's an insane stat. I want to kind of mention, first of all, I'm going to go with an even bolder prediction. Once they get healthy, once Wan'Dale Robinson and Kadarius Toney are healthy and performing at the level that they can, I don't think Kenny Galladay is a Giant by the end of the season. I think the Odell Beckham Jr. route is a very likely route the year, of course, with the Cleveland Browns, because you don't make this.
Only if they can trade him, Rabbi. They're not going to cut him. That would be too big a financial hit.
It might be a financial hit, but I do think the difference with Brian Daboll in this scheme is if you don't fit into his scheme, you're not playing. So maybe he'll get a 5th or 6th round pick for him, but I don't see Kenny Galladay getting a lot of time out there. And the wide receiver is a huge problem, and it makes the biggest question. Wins and losses are a big thing this season, but I wanted to see improvement, and I also wanted to see the very, very big question. Can Daniel Jones be this team's starting quarterback? And you don't have answers when you get problems like that. It just kicks the can down the road and down.
And we talked about this. We talked about it all of last year in the offseason and coming into this season about how much what this year was going to be, that they were going to use this year to determine whether or not, do you tag him in the offseason? Do you give him another contract? But right now, as things stand, you still have, it's still an unknown for a lot of the same reasons it was an unknown last year. So I agree with you, Rabbi. They need to get everybody healthy because they need to see what he can do when he has his full complement of weapons. Barkley playing at the level he's playing at now is a big step up.
It's not even just, Jay, it's not even just the full complement of weapons. It's the fact that the people who are out there who are supposed to make plays just continuously drop passes and don't run routes. And so you have to play with who you have out there. That is a complete answer. And when they can't perform at their level and you can completely blame them, that's a problem. The only other thing I want to say is this. You need Daniel Jones to run from the start of the game to the end of the game, because I think they let Daniel Jones do more of his thing in the second half and when they make adjustments, which is very good. Yeah. But they did that very well in game 1. They did that very well in game 2. But when Dallas came, the one thing I was very impressed with is Dallas came back and readjusted, which is something that didn't happen the first 2 games. Giants can't get off to slow starts like they have in games 1 through 3. Anthony, you want the cat to answer this question for you? Because the defense has also had some issues some way or the other, but they're a little more negative on this case, in your opinion. What did you take away?
Yeah, it's not a show. It's not a weekly show if I cat has to make a cameo appearance from time to time.
It's pretty much been that way. I just locked the door. My cats do not come in here when I ask them to, even if I want.
Yeah, but the Giants defense, obviously, they were disappointing. Had a number of chances to make plays. They weren't able to do it. Cooper Rush threw for 215 yards. They didn't put the ball in harm's way. Yeah, picked and choose his opportunities. But the Giants didn't get any pressure on him whatsoever. Obviously, they got the pass rushers back and Thibodeau and Ojulari. but both guys combined for just 2 tackles, no quarterback pressures. Even has Wink Martindale moved them around on the defensive line to see who would get the mismatch. That didn't quite happen. Also, you think about Leonard Williams being a huge loss as far as stopping the run. Like the Cowboys averaged 6.4 yards a carry with Leonard Williams out of the lineup. Obviously, you think about the touchdown run to Ezekiel Elliott in the second half that tied the game up, which obviously was an opportunity for the Giants when the Giants took the lead to the defense to make a stand and get the ball back to the offense coming off a touchdown scoring drive, especially that Barkley run that really got the stadium into the game. But on that touchdown run, I didn't even notice this until I watched the replay the next day. The Giants only had 10 guys in the field, so it was like, okay, no wonder it's almost like he walked in and take Crowder. You gotta know how to wrap guys up. Hitting somebody as strong as Ezekiel Elliott, a shoulder high, it's not gonna work. I don't know what he was thinking on that play, but you think about it, the Cowboys, this is really the first time that we saw a team take advantage of the Giants' young secondary. And CeeDee Lamb had a huge game. I mean, granted, he made up for a wide open drop in the second half with that one-handed touchdown, that one-handed snag for a touchdown in the end zone. But also there was but also one of the misplays of the Giants. There was a couple of them that stood out. One that set up that touchdown was one of the Adoree Jackson biting on a wheel route fake and allowing Lamb to get behind him. He was wide open on that play that set the post to go on the one. Also, there was blown coverage on the previous drive that led to the Ezekiel touchdown. So this is where the first really and the Cowboys obviously Kellen Moore did a good job of adjusting in the second half. You talk about adjusting strategies. In the first half, the Giants defense was a more bend but don't break because they clearly was able to hold the Cowboys to 2 field goals. They were able to get off the field. They did a good job of swarming to the ball. But obviously, when you allow even a backup quarterback to get as much time as Cooper Rush was able to get, that's not going to help. And I'm just looking up some more numbers for a second. The Giants gave up 178 yards on the ground rushing, give up obviously 2 big runs in the game. So this is a team that really, when they're playing well, they're aggressive, they're flying around, but getting pressure on the quarterback is starting to be a bit of a concern, a problem, because they've had to send extra guys to do that, and unfortunately, that does kind of leave the back end of that defense exposed as the young, like I said, young secondary. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to get beat on big plays, and we saw that Monday night. They're going to have to figure out a way to get pressure on the quarterback. Obviously, they got to get Leonard Williams might miss up a couple of games. They're going to have to figure out a way to slow down the running game because the Giants, that was really the Giants' strength coming into Monday night, was being able to stop the run. Obviously, Leonard Williams a big part of that. But they got to figure out a way to get some kind of pressure on the quarterback because you don't want to keep sending 6-7 guys on a blitz and leaving guys out on the island that just not used to it. But then when you have the situation where, okay, we have the matchups we want on the opposing team, they go after these young guys and give up the big plays.
And
it's going to be up to it's going to be up to Martin to figure out what to do. I mean, you got Justin Fields who hasn't played well.
Yeah, and we're going to talk. Let's just talk, and we're going to talk about that in just a second here. By the way,
before you get into your point, I got to give you some props. Tony Pollard made you look like a freaking prophet on Monday night.
Tony Pollard is probably the second most dangerous backup in the game right now. Actually, I put James Robinson up there, the Travis Etienne combination, because Robinson's been amazing for Jacksonville so far this year. But Khalil Herbert is going to be a problem this week, especially with Bears running back David Montgomery is day-to-day after suffering an ankle injury against the Texans. But when your backup is averaging 7.3 yards a carry, I think you're fine. Herbert took the lead role essentially in the last three quarters of that game against the Texans on Sunday. 157 yards, 2 touchdowns on 20 carries, most rushing yards in the NFL Week 3. Had a 52-yard run on the first offensive play of the second half. Then he decided to score the touchdown himself. 3 games, 33 carries, 240 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's 6th in the NFL. By the way, did I mention he doesn't start? His 7.3 average is second among running backs with 10 or more carries. The only person he has 9 carries of 10 yards or more. The only person that does that is Nick Chubb, and Chubb has done a lot of carrying for that team with 62 carries. Herbert is definitely going to be a huge role in this season, and he might eventually take over Montgomery's workload purely. It's a thunder and lightning type deal with the Bears. And you're going to need to do that because Justin Fields in the Bears offense is terrible. It's shit. I cannot say anything better. He is, this whole season, 23 of 45 for 297 yards. Joe Flacco has probably thrown for 3 times as many passes as Justin Fields has. He has 2 touchdowns and 4 interceptions in 3 games. Fields called his performance trash and terrible after a victory on Sunday. You don't hear too many people calling their performance trash and terrible after a victory. So the team is going to go.
And this is why quarterback one-loss records don't mean jack.
It doesn't, but it means something because you're 2-1, and that's the way the Bears system has worked so far. Tough division. There's 3 2-1 teams, and it's worked. Okay, they've won 2 games. It's the same record as the Giants, but
like I said, I
both
can't
of those teams
out.
You can't. Both of those teams have been very disrespected. The Bears have been disrespected all season, and the Giants, again, they were 1-point favorites against the Dallas Cowboys team with Cooper Rush at quarterback. So before we knew Cooper Rush was actually even more better than advertised. Going to be very interesting to see what this week's game brings. It's actually a game that both teams can afford to lose. They don't want to, but you're still at the Giants are going 2-2. It's not terrible. They do have a London trip in Green Bay on the horizon, but I think right now you can see that the Giants are in the right direction. Speaking of trash and teams not going in the right direction, I can't say the same thing for the Jets. They lost 27-12 in week 3 against the Cincinnati Bengals. And it's a game that pretty much had Red Zone basically saying does not compute to go to after 2:30 p.m. on Sunday.
Okay, so it isn't just me. Okay, so it isn't just me. I thought it was just me that like I was missing something, but for the life of me, I don't think I had the Jets game up on my television to watch it for the show tonight. And I was watching Red Zone on my laptop. At no point during that game did anything from that game on either side show up on Red Zone.
Well, the problem with that is there was a lot of big touchdowns in that game. A lot of teams were in the Red Zone at the same time. And frankly, the game sucked. A lot to go through here as the Jets prepared to go to Acrisure Stadium to take on the equally
Heinz Field, baby. Heinz Field, always.
Acrisure Stadium at this moment. It's got the money, so I will pay. They paid the money, so I will say it. And they're going to take on the equally 1-2 and very equally desperate Pittsburgh Steelers. Zach Wilson has been cleared, so we're thinking he'll be at the helm after his preseason injuries, but there's a lot this team is going to have to do to get back after some disaster of a game. Jay, let's spoil this. No positive here. We got some negatives to take care of. Jay, what was your takeaway from week 3 on offense?
I mean, I'm going to give you an overarching term, and it's going to be this simple. The offense was bad. Rabbi, I did find some positives, and I'll get to them later on. But the 27-12 loss to the Bengals was full of, the same old Jets mistakes. Turnovers, they had 4. Drops by the receivers, they had 3. Costly penalties, 4 of those. All the positives that I saw in the previous week in the last minute 55 with Joe Flacco went out the window this past week. And like last week when he had plenty of help with all the good, he also had plenty of help with all the bad, but it all starts with him. And Flacco was just flat out bad against the Bengals. Granted, the offensive line didn't help much. According to True Media Stats, Flacco was pressured 23 times, hit 7 and sacked 4. That's only part of the problem. Flacco's inability to escape the pocket and evade the pass rush made it difficult to get anything going in the passing game. And it won't get any easier if left tackle George Fant, who left Sunday's game with a knee injury, ends up on the injured list for a significant amount of time. Fant may be the Jets' best option at left tackle, but he struggled mightily before leaving the game, allowing 1.5 sacks to Trey Hendrickson in the second and third quarters. His replacement, Connor McDermott, was even worse, as Pro Football Focus gave him a 20.6 pass blocking grade for the 27 pass blocking snaps he played against Cincinnati. Abysmal does not even come close to describing how bad that mark is. Getting back to Flacco, who also had accuracy issues against the Bengals. There were too many plays where he threw the ball to one receiver when another, specifically Garrett Wilson or Elijah Moore, was wide open elsewhere. Exhibit A, second quarter, Flacco forces a downfield pass into a heavy coverage, trying to hit Braxton Berrios in a throw window about this big. That's right. 5'9" Braxton Berrios. No surprise that Bengals linebacker Logan Wilson picked it off. Flacco owned that mistake, saying, quote, "I probably got greedy." You think so, Joe? Flacco finished 28 of 52, which is an anemic 53.8 completion percentage for 285 yards, but just as anemic, his yards per attempt was only 5.48. 0 scores, 2 picks, plus 3 fumbles, 2 of which he lost, and a 53.8 passer rating. Want some context to compare and contrast? Even in a rookie season last year that could be charitably be called up and down, Zach Wilson had a single game passer rating that bad only twice. 37 in a 25-6 week 2 loss to New England, and a 42.6 in a 26-0 week 3 loss to Denver, which happened to be his second and third career starts. But like I said, it wasn't all Flacco. The Jets offense got no help from running back Michael Carter. 11 carries for just 39 yards, it's 3.5 per carry, 1 catch for 7. Or wide receiver Corey Davis, 5 targets, but only 2 catches for just 27 yards. There was some good, as I said. Running back Breece Hall, that kid continues to impress me. 8 carries, 39 yards, a little under 5 yards a pop. Got 11 targets in the passing game, had 6 catches for 53 yards. Garrett Wilson continues to improve. 10 targets, 6 catches, 60 yards. And tight end Tyler Conklin was the really big pleasant surprise. 8 targets, caught them all, 84 yards. They were all productive, as was kicker Greg Zuerlein, who looked more like the guy we used to call Legatron back in the day. Hit all 4 of his field goals, including 2 from 50 plus. But guys, we all know this. When your kicker is the only one scoring points, chances are good you're not going to win, as was the case here. And Rabbi, even if Zach Wilson returns on Saturday against my Steelers, and the latest reports that came out today have that looking more and more likely, that won't solve all the issues this offense has. Yes, he's mobile and in theory can escape pass rusher and extend plays both in and out of the pocket, which Flacco can't, which will also open up other sections of the playbook. He's going to be rusty as hell, which is not a recipe for success, even against a Pittsburgh defense that's missing TJ Watt and potentially Minkah Fitzpatrick. The Jets are going to need more of the offense we saw in the last 155 of week 2 for almost all 60 minutes on Sunday for them to have their best chance of getting the W here.
The one thing that does help Zach Wilson being in that offense is obviously what you just said, being more mobile and not being a statue with Joe Flacco is. But more importantly, it again continues to help build the roadmap to the future. And again, get this kid starts, because getting a win over here can help out in the future. There's going to be some highs for Zach Wilson this year. There's going to be a lot more lows. This is a high that is definitely needed, because this is a very winnable game on both sides of the ball. Okay. Yeah. Anthony, I was happy with Sauce Gardner. I think Sauce Gardner has been a big plus in most of the game this season, but that's one person out of 11, Anthony. This has just been a bad defense overall as well. And last week, they couldn't get off the field.
Yeah, Vama Salah is a defensive guru. He has a very, very funny way of showing it. This defense struggled last Sunday. There's no question about it. Joe Burrow, 20 of 36, 275 yards, 3 touchdowns, 114.9 QBR rating. The Bengals converted their first 4 throw downs in the game. Burrow hit them with big plays of 56 and 45 yards. The pass rush really didn't get nailed Joe Burrow. I mean, Burrow got the ball quickly. There's been talk about the Bengals' offensive line issues, obviously, even since last season. The Jets really didn't really get to him all that much. They did a good job of Jamal Chase limiting his production, but left him wide open on one of the Burrow's touchdown throws. The Bengals 7 of 14 on throw down. And you mentioned Rabbi, that's part of the reason why the Jets couldn't get off the field. There was also some mental breakdowns as well. You mentioned Sauce Gardner. The Bengals went after him. They tested him. He held up for the most part, but he did drop off a little too deep on coverage on one of those touchdowns. Samaje Perine was.
It was basically it was something that could have easily gotten the Bengals off of the field early in the game, and they just called the wrong scheme.
Yeah, there was also a necessary roughness penalty that kept the drive alive. There was a couple of mental miscues. Quinn Williams getting into an argument on the sideline
with his defensive line coach.
I mean, this is growing pains to say the least for a defense that's now ranked 26th in the NFL overall and 16th in yards allowed. So Robert Saleh, he's got his work cut out because this defense, and we know it's a young team, and they're gonna have their growing pains, but the hallmark and the reason why he was brought in was because of defense, and it's like the defense has kind of regressed. If you look at the first 2 games of the season against Baltimore, they played well enough to at least keep them in the game. It took a Cleveland meltdown to erase how bad the Jets defense played in that game. And then you have this week where Cincinnati actually giving Burrow enough time to find his weapons downfield. Picked apart the secondary, but the Jets mistakes obviously didn't help matters. And you gotta wonder, moving forward, just what exactly how can this defense get any better? Because right now it just seems like each week you try to give him credit for doing this. Something like you said, Sauce Gardner, he's getting tested. He's a rookie. He's holding up his zone. He made a couple of errors. But one of the things I like, he has done a good job with coverage. He's not afraid to stick his head in and make the tackle, open for the tackle. So those are things I really do like as far as what I'm seeing out of a first-year guy. But this Jet defense is going to be drawing pains. And it's not going to get. I don't think it's going to get any easier when you get this schedule the rest of the way. So it's going to be a real challenge of this Jet team to see if they can at least get off the field and limit some of those down conversions.
There are, after this, it's just not just that. It's the fact that when you're playing teams like Cincinnati, you're going to be playing Miami and Buffalo twice this season, and their offenses are very, very good. And in an age of offense, almost unstoppable at various points. You're going to be playing Green Bay later this month. You're going to be playing Minnesota. You're going to be playing Jacksonville. You're going to be playing Detroit. If your defense can't get any better, it doesn't matter what your offense does because you're going to play 30-point games regardless. And if you think Zach Wilson is going to win a 38-35 game, if you think Zach Wilson's going to get to 30, you're kidding yourself. So the Steelers just decided to have injuries like crazy this week. So I can't really think of one player to watch on this team, but so I'm going to just hedge my answers on a couple of things and throw in a few stats. Minka Fitzpatrick has been the team's bright spot this year when it comes to just being the leader of everything, considering of TJ Watt's injury in game number 1 of the season late against Cincinnati. And Minka made some big plays in that game to make sure that the Pittsburgh Steelers would actually beat Cincinnati. Took a lot of other things too, but give Pittsburgh the credit for what they did. But he is just, there's been times when that team has struggled and you can't just have one safety. New England just had a little bit more in the tank in week number 2 and got a touchdown from Nelson Aguilar because of somebody, which we will mention in just a matter of moments. And then week 3, they just got destroyed on the ground by Nick Chubb and in the air by Amari Cooper, who looked ever the player who was in Dallas last year as a number 1 wide receiver, maybe even better. And they let David Njoku basically have the first half of his life, making 7 catches. Now for the cornerbacks, Fitzpatrick did sustain a concussion, and in classic Mike Tomlin style, no one found out about it until 5 days later.
No one could figure out the play where it happened.
No one can figure it out, but it sustained a concussion. Luckily, because of the fact that the Steelers played Thursday, and I believe Fitzpatrick did practice today, there is a very decent chance that Fitzpatrick is going to get cleared, probably by the Miami Dolphin doctors, because he used to play in Miami, and he could very much well play this week. If not, you lose a little bit of stuff there. They have great quarterbacks in Cam Sutton this year, who's only allowed a 66.9% rating with wide receivers against him, and Levi Wallace, who's gone a 78.5% rating. And now I'm going to mention the one who's going to make Jay probably curse. And that's the guy who was responsible for said Nelson Aguilar touchdown that I just mentioned, Ahkello Witherspoon. Oh, he has been such a liability. Remember those 2 numbers I just said? Witherspoon's quarterback rating against is 112. 13 of 18, 155 yards, 2 touchdowns. Did have an interception in that Cincinnati game, but it's 112. And yes, he's battled very good number 1 wide receivers.
Everybody in the Steelers secondary had an interception in that game. It doesn't,
Yeah, including.
Come on, it was an Oprah type deal. You get an interception. You get an interception. You get an interception.
We just have to mention it in terms of stats, but it's understandable.
Yes, no, I agree with you. Yeah, 100%.
But it's been terrible because also there was another play last week where Amari Cooper stepped out of bounds and he would have been charged with another 40-plus yard reception. He's also injured, by the way. He might need some time to heal. It's kind of like the Yankees' Frankie Montas injury. You're going in until we can actually get you to get right. But the secondary is a concern, but can be a big help because of you're playing Zach Wilson. You're playing a quarterback who no one knows what he's going to do. He's never really had any time outside of training camp to throw with Garrett Wilson, who had another pretty good game until he got injured last week against Cincinnati, and then he had that big game against Cleveland. He's proven he could be the team's future at wide receiver very easily. He is a stud, but still have a lot of concerns. You had the drops last week, but you have like that Wilson and Moore combo could be very dangerous and could actually torch you from time to time. And then you have the possibility of, if the ball hockey defense does its job, Zach Wilson could be in for a tough day. I have no idea what to expect for this game, but Heinz Field is going to be reeking of desperation on Sunday because Pittsburgh loses that game. They have Tampa Bay coming up. They have Miami coming up. They have Buffalo coming up, I believe, the week after in week 5.
Yeah, it's
loser of this game is going to have a rough first half of the season.
Yeah,
and I'm put like this. I'm put like this. My mama named it Heinz. I'm gonna call it Heinz. But I look at it like this though. The Steelers, I think, of the 2 teams, the Steelers are definitely in a sense of desperation when you get the division.
More desperate one.
Yeah, without question. And the fact that, hey, look, I asked you, Jay, is it time for a quarterback change at this point?
And here's the thing.
I know it's the overreaction.
I'm going to answer your question in the same way. Mark Caboli, the athletics beat writer for the Steelers, has been answering it every time he gets asked it in his weekly, mailbag column. Why? What's the point? Here's the thing. If you think this defense, when they get Watt back, what looks like maybe in another 3 weeks or so, if Fitzpatrick is healthy, if you think that the offensive line is going to if you're not sure about the offensive line, if you think this defense has enough to keep you in games where what Trubisky brings to the offense is enough to get you over the hump, where you can be competitive in the AFC North, through this season. Why? Because honestly, why would you put a rookie quarterback behind an offensive line that can't seem to open holes on a consistent basis for a running back like Najee Harris, cannot give even Trubisky, who is so much more mobile than Roethlisberger, can't seem to give him enough time to throw the ball downfield and take shots over the middle. Matt Canada seems to be completely averse to doing that because it takes too long and it takes too long to develop. If your concern is that you don't have enough on the offensive line, why would you stick a rookie quarterback and put him through that? The only way you do that, and this is what it'll come down to, and this is, I think, how Tomlin will make the decision. If there's a point in this season where they see that, we're not even going to finish close to 500. Let's say they lose to the Jets, and then Rabbi ran through their gauntlet coming up. If they lose all of those games, and you're looking at like 1-6, 1-7, or whatever, if you're at that point, your season is done. You're going nowhere but down. Start Pickett. But as long as you are competitive, and you're not, on a ridiculous losing streak, and you're able to stay competitive within the AFC North, no, that's not going to happen. There's no reason to. My problem is not with what Trubisky has or has not done. My problem is with Matt Canada being way too damn risk adverse. The jet sweeps aren't working. Nobody's buying it. He's whatever innovation that we thought we were going to get from him, I'm not seeing it. I think before they stick Pickett behind center, Matt Canada is going to lose his play calling authority. And then we'll see what happens. I don't think you see Pickett under center unless the Steelers are, 1-6, 2-7, or whatever, and have absolutely zero chance of getting into the wild card slot.
I'm just telling you right now, and this is going to accentuate Jay's point. If you're not going to start him with 10 days rest against a Jet team that can make you look good, why are you going to start him against Buffalo, Tampa Bay, or the remaining 2 3-0 teams left in the NFL? It makes no sense. But if that is still a struggle, and I think even 2-6 is a point, it's time to make the change. I think Mitch Trubisky, Canada's system has been awful, but I do think Mitch Trubisky has been below average so far, especially in the Thursday night game when there's throws that I thought he could easily have made, and he just didn't make them. It was the first time I've really seen that, because also I didn't see any of the New England game, but and honestly, thank God. But it was pretty bad. By the way, bad game.
I think this game is going to be very telling. I think
this is going to be very telling for both teams because, again, I think whoever loses this game may not win another game on this side of this first half of the schedule. By the way, I saw I worked San Francisco, Denver on Sunday. That's the lowest form of a game that you could possibly see. That's a game that is challenge.
So last I recall, I think the Giants beat the Rockies 11-10, if I'm correct. That Sunday night game. I mean, that was hard to watch.
No, the Rockies beat the Giants 11-10 is actually the way that you would use that on the bottom of the ninth home run by Troy Tulowitzki.
Wow.
I would say that thank God for House of Dragons. Okay, that's all I want to say.
Amen.
I get paid to work that, so you don't get paid for House of the Dragon. So whatever.
No.
All right. Finally, with a pair of home runs on Friday night in Los Angeles, the man who deserves to be renamed the Machine has moved his way into the 700 Club. It's the more fun club and not the ultra religious one that you've always heard about. This is the real 700 Club. Okay. In the retirement tour of Pujols, let's just look at it a couple of ways. Number one, not too many people have ever hit 7 home runs in the major leagues. Only 3 have done it. And Albert Pujols has finally hit it. That was after years and years. So not just the number 700, but the season that Albert Pujols has had, I would have given you over 20-1 odds to say that Albert was going to get to 700. The man has, and I counted this, 17 dingers since July. That is ridiculous for a guy who has barely played over 100 games. So we talked about Judge in the opener. I'll let you focus on anything you want, whether it be this season, whether it be Albert Pujols' career. He's had a retirement tour that has been the quietest retirement tour, that it's about 1/20th of a Yankee retirement tour, from whether it be Judges, whether it be Derek Jeter's in 2014 or Mariano Rivera's a few years later. So, and what does 700 or this season by April mean to you?
You know what it is? And obviously we talked about the Cardinals being a team to be reckoned with in the postseason. I think this is a bookend storybook, a bookend to when we see a tremendous career. I think people kind of forget just how good Albert Pujols was, because he was with the Angels, and obviously did the issues with putting a winning team onto the field. But his earlier years with the Cardinals, I mean, the guy was just unreal to watch. I mean, it was really like he really could. There was a video game commercial back in the day. I say after video game, where his manager Tony Russo literally says he can hit anything, and he literally did hit everything. But yeah, just look at this 43 game stretch from August onward. This is the splits: 306, 372, 674. 14 home runs and 137 trips to the plate. This is like 2004 to 2012 Albert Pujols that we were seeing. I go back 2002 Albert Pujols, that was his first really big years in the majors. When I think of Albert Pujols, I think of the home, not just the home runs, and obviously just being one of the best well-rounded players and well-rounded hitters of all time. The timely hitting these home runs. You think about the NLCS against Houston in 2005, where he just basically not hit one out of Minute Maid Park that tied the game. And you think about obviously the 2 world titles and being a big part of particularly the 2011 Cardinal team that went on to win it all, and being a big part of that. But also, his his behavior was his humility. I think probably stood out through all of this. I mean, think about this. He hits a 700 home run. Obviously, 699 and 700 against the Dodgers of all teams. And he says the home run, the balls are for the fans. There's the souvenirs. I mean, that's something you can appreciate from a guy who has been in the spotlight for a long time, was playing the game correctly. He's played the game hard. Obviously, the last few years have been kind of tough, but to see him go out, and obviously he is stuck to this being his last year, to see him get the chance to go out this way and to remind people just how good he had been his whole career. I would assume it'd be a Hall of Fame career.
Oh yeah, first ballot.
And the fact that he's going to get at least one last postseason run before he hangs up his cleats once and for all. I think this is a storybook ending. As good as you can get it. I mean, he came from the guy who was on a video game, MVP baseball back in the day, to a guy that's now on the way out, has been seeing a guy like Aaron Judge, the younger generation of these now Washington life baseball figures kind of be in the spotlight. Like I said, it's almost like this past few days we've seen a passing the torch in some way. We're seeing the now previous generation of sluggers kind of giving way to the newer generation. And like I said, it's gonna be like I said this earlier, it's gonna be a fun month of October and early November to watch as a baseball fan. And obviously, we have teams in the postseason, so it's gonna be added investment interest. So, like I said, storybook ending.
Mm-hmm. Guys, in all my years of watching baseball, I can't remember any future first ballot Hall of Famer authoring a better right off into the sunset season than Albert Pujols. And I can't think of a better chapter of that season than him hitting his 700th home run in a Cardinals uniform. I mean, granted, it would have been better if he could have hit it in St. Louis in front of those fans. I mean, and there are a few better baseball cities than the one of Musial and Gibson. But if it had to be on the road, then Chavez Ravine, where Pujols rediscovered his joy of the game last year, is a fitting venue. I just wish the late Vin Scully was still around to call this one, just as he did Henry Aaron's 715th back in 1974. Pujols, as Rabbi alluded to, is now in some very rarefied air, joining Barry Bonds, Hank Aaron, and Babe Ruth to become just the fourth player in MLB history to hit 700 homers and the first to be born outside the United States. I found a breakdown of the stadiums where he hit each of his milestone home runs, and I found it very interesting that he hit them all in only 5 stadiums. Number 100, Dodger Stadium. Number 200, the second iteration of Busch Stadium. Number 300, the third iteration of Busch Stadium. Numbers 400 and 500, Nationals Park. Number 600, Angel Stadium. And number 7, Dodger Stadium. Pujols had a couple of really good quotes in the aftermath of the historic home runs. Here's the first one. I just want to take this opportunity to thank all the Dodger fans. You guys brought me the joy I had as a little boy when I started playing baseball at 5 years old. Came back to me last year, the 5.5 months I spent with a great organization, a great team. It was a blessing. Here's the second one. To be able to do it here at Dodger Stadium, my joy pretty much of this game came back in the postseason in the clubhouse a few feet away from here. It's pretty special. If they didn't give me that opportunity, I don't think I would be sitting here today, or you would have seen history tonight. And I tend to agree with that last part. Regaining his joy of playing the game, coupled with the DH coming to the National League this season, is why he was not only able to go back to St. Louis and sign a deal to finish his career, but also have a role where he was able to get the at-bats that allowed him to go out this way. The only thing about it that bothered me was that because the game was on Apple TV, there were undoubtedly a decent number of fans in St. Louis who didn't get to see it happen or hear their own announcers make the historic call. Other than that, it was just another example of why Brad Pitt's line from the movie Moneyball will always be true. How can you not be romantic about baseball?
I'm going to lead this into my final rant in just a moment, but I just want to give you a couple of things about Albert Pujols. Jay already mentioned he's the only member of the 4 of that 700 home run club to be born outside of the United States. He's also the first ever to hit his 700th against a team he formerly played for. He's also the first one to hit his 700th as the second home run in the game, along with his 699th. And here's the best one. He is the only person to hit that milestone homer. By the way, I really love the stat that he hit 400 and 500 in an opposing ballpark, along with 100 and 700 as a visitor. But here's the best stat. Out of those 4 players, Aaron, Bonds, Ruth, and now him, he is the only one to be older than his manager, Carlos Marmol, of that milestone home run. And one thing that has really helped this season is, I think Anthony mentioned 14 home runs since the All-Star break, but him going to the All-Star game, playing in his favorite stadium, and being somebody who was just loved and adored. And we were mentioning this is almost a negative earlier. This is a great moment for him, and it really fueled the second half of the season. He's had some storybook endings. Mention the All-Star game for a second, and that leads me to my final thought.
I know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Well, yes. I'm actually a fan of the NBA, NHL, and MLB All-Star games for a few reasons. Number one, they're placed appropriately in the middle of a long slog of a season. I don't necessarily need to see all of these games this weekend, so it's nice to have one weekend. Even if defense is optional, it's perfectly fine to see a game like that because you don't get to see it often. And they tweak it from time to time. The NBA brought themselves into this little fantasy draft type deal with captains, which is usually LeBron and player B making teams throughout, and then they go to a target number. It's actually really cool. The NHL went to a format of doing a round robin with the 4 divisions in there, and they've actually probably have my favorite skills weekend of the weekend that they do beforehand. That actually has surpassed the NBA's skills weekend, but both are still pretty cool. And baseball has their Monday Home Run Derby, and they have their Tuesday All-Star game. It's in a dead period during the year. I love seeing these players play, and the fact that Fox allowed these players to be mic'd up for the first time during an All-Star game was a rousing success. The formula works. However, for the NFL, it just can't work. You can't do the Pro Bowl during midseason. God forbid Roger Goodell is going to go insane if he has to basically lose a week of revenue and sales, because no one's going to give a shit about a Pro Bowl during the middle of the season. And also, it's 8 games in. Why would you do a Pro Bowl 8 games in during a season? You can't really tell who the best players are during the season, and most of them get hurt anyway. So what's the difference? It's also played, so it has to be played right before the Super Bowl, when either you're too hurt to play in the game, or you just are playing in the Super Bowl, so you physically cannot play in the game. And people don't want to come to Las Vegas, but guess what? They have to, because they're going into a more important game in Glendale, Arizona later in the season. Overall, the NFL system needed a little bit of overhauling. And in a moment when we have a baseball commissioner that just says, I hate the game, I'm going to change every rule at every minute of the day, the NFL was never really ever talking about the Pro Bowl being pretty much kiboshed. And it was this week. In comes the Pro Bowl games, along with the Olympic torch and everything that is being brought to Las Vegas coming. There will be no more tackle football on the Sunday of the Pro Bowl. It will be, as what Anthony said, a glorified flag football game, which he had thought it had been for many years. And frankly, so did I. But it's interesting. It's different, and they are going to do a whole week of games, and they've actually involved Peyton Manning's Omaha Productions to be involved in the week's events. Fan voting will continue, and obviously you'll still have it this way. Listen, the NFL is just in a no-win spot with the Pro Bowl, so do what you can to make it better. Do what you can to make it more entertaining. Hell, even put some kind of like cheap act. Does Rihanna have a sister who could perform at the halftime show just to be like Rihanna Light? Can we just do like something like a shanty at the halftime show over there, to be perfectly honest? But overall, the Pro Bowl games are just what we need, because you know what? Why not? For God's sakes, it's still happening in the first week of February, because we have to move the Super Bowl now another week because of the 18-game season. Will this change stuff? I don't know. It'll probably allow some people's hamstrings to heal up a little quicker so they can get that free trip to Las Vegas. And we don't have to see people playing in the Pro Bowl who we never thought would play in the Pro Bowl. I think Mark Sanchez made a Pro Bowl once or twice. I'm not even going to look. I'm just going to assume he was an injury replacement way back when. But all in all, the Pro Bowl games are going to be the Pro Bowl games, and that's all they're going to be. But you know what? Kudos to the NFL for trying, at least. Not the good job, good effort. Good job, good effort. All right. That about does it for On the Sports Line. As myself, Jay Kaplan, and Anthony Strait bid you all adieu. Once the last day of the regular season is done on Wednesday, and Mets Braves, I swear to God, if you play a makeup game on Thursday, I will come down to your office, Rob Manfred, and I will seriously ask you to apologize to me yourself. But we'll be back on Wednesday night to break down the wild card series that are coming on the weekend and the playoffs that are going forward. And kids,
not Wednesday. Wednesday's Yom Kippur. We ain't doing that.
We'll be doing it other than Wednesday, because I forgot it was Yom Kippur. That might be a little bit more of a thing. We'll have to talk back to you later on. Thursday might be the more likely scenario right now, unless it goes 2 days. I'm not that good of a Jew. All right. We'll be back that night on Thursday to break down the wild card series of the weekend and the playoffs forward. We have what the kids call socials. YouTube.com/on the sports lines on demand. Facebook.com/on the sports lines if you want to see this great package here live. And since I can't manage to talk pages, shout out to the show I just did before. Jay, we have a Twitter at.
We do. It's at ONTH Sports Lines, where you will find the link to this show at some point tomorrow, and a few other interesting sports related tidbits that we think are worth your time to check out.
Just don't quote Michael K again. I hate him so much. All right. Back in 8 days. Good night, everyone from On the Sports
Good night,
Line.
everybody.
Good night.
Thanks, Jason.